You're not live. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We shall give a minute for people to get on, but we are super excited for this video today. We've been planning to launch Awareness School all year, but then we delayed it for one reason, and then we delayed it for a birthday trip, and then we delayed it because we thought we were moving immediately, and then it was let's just launch it. And we'll get it going, and it'll be perfect. So
these are your big action-taking personal growth experts here.
Yeah, right.
Help you beat procrastination.
You put it off, and you put it off. No, we're ready. And I guess it was one of those things too, where there is almost that you told people it was going to launch in January. Don't you feel pressure? And it was no, I'm not gonna pressure myself in that way. So I just knew that it would unfold perfectly. And it feels like the right time, and it feels I'm super excited. Last time we did Awareness School was really fun. It was 10 weeks, and we're gonna answer a few questions, and if you have any questions about it, we're just gonna talk about what it is, why you might be interested in joining it, why it's so cool, a little bit of the history. Do you want to tell them how Awareness School came to be, or how the Ever Better Life course came to be?
Oh God, I didn't know where to begin.
Yeah, right. Well, it's a 10 module course, and so basically Awareness School walks you through the Ever Better Life course. And the Ever Better Life course is a course that was developed from a lot of different schools of thought and Steve's genius brain, and it's basically a framework for understanding your experience. I was thinking of some other names, you could call Awareness School, you could call it Self-Understanding School, you could call it Making the Unconscious Conscious School, the school of why do I feel the way I feel and do the things I do.
You can tell why we've selected Awareness School. None of these quite roll off the tongue quite as well.
But yeah, ultimately, it's a way of really getting to know the inner workings of you. And it's a super cool experience because, and this is something I think we talked about the last time we launched Awareness School, is it's about these patterns rather than the content. And so what we're looking at is we're zooming out above your experience and looking at the areas that aren't working. And the reason the stuff in your life isn't working in particular ways is because of typically unseen stuff back behind the background of your mind. It's the scaffolding of the building. It's the bones. And because we're so used to living in the projection, in the consequence essentially of our minds being arranged in the way that they are, we're just drowning in experience. And this program will take you into a systematic way of understanding, why is my experience what it is? Why do I get so lost in certain emotions? Why do I keep doing things in a certain way that I know doesn't work, but yet here I am doing and feeling the same thing and finding myself in the same situation? And so the 10 weeks, we unpack different elements of your perception of reality. We get a really deep dive into it, so that you can start kind of engineering your experience on purpose rather than just living life on autopilot.
Yeah. One of the things for me that I really like about this course, and really about, I guess, everything about how we approach this kind of work, but the Ever Better Life course in particular, and Awareness School as well, because it is the Ever Better Life course kind of brought to life, is we're not telling you, okay, here's the way things are. Here's the truth about your mind, and here's the truth about thinking, and here's the truth about where feeling's coming from. That's not really what we're doing. What we're doing is saying, here is a useful way of thinking about thought, thinking about your experience, thinking about your feelings. Here's a useful way of kind of mentally organizing the various components of what it's like to be you. So what you're thinking, how you're feeling, what's your overall attitude, what are your current behavioral defaults and inclinations, what's the reality of the physical environment in which you're currently living, and kind of the manner in which that physical environment invites you to feel, invites you to kind of define yourself. Because if you look around your house or your neighborhood, at your job or whatever, and it's the way you want it to be, that invites you to feel a certain way about yourself. It tends, to move you into certain states of consciousness that are more or less useful. And then, if you don't like certain things about the way your external world is right now, it's just kind of a constant invitation to devalue yourself, or to focus your mind on what you don't want, or to feel kind of depressed or disempowered or whatever. And so a lot of what this course is about is here's a useful way of thinking about what has your attention, right? The fact that it has your attention, that will allow you actually to move forward, right? So when we're talking about beliefs, a lot of people get into arguments about beliefs. Are there any such thing as good belief? Should I believe anything at all? Is any belief really true? I don't really care about any of that. What I'm interested in is let me form an understanding of beliefs that allow me to interact with them in ways that improve the quality of my experience. Let me find a way of thinking about myself and who I want to be and where I currently am and what my problems are or whatever, that actually allows me to do things that are smart and resourceful so that I can start creating results that I want moving forward. And one of the things that, the Ever Better Life course has a lot of what you would call techniques in it, which is, there's these implementation guides, all these little exercises that you can do, make a list of this, rank your goals, your values, here's a hierarchy, focus your mind this way, not that way, take a feeling, do this thing with it. There's all these really cool techniques that are good. They're very good. But my favorite part of the whole course is not so much the individual techniques as the overall attitude that those various techniques invite a person to assume with regard to their life, their internal experience, and all of this. And one of the things that I really like about Awareness School is that the emphasis is on that attitude. So whereas the Ever Better Life course, if you just take it on your own, you got a ton of techniques, and if you read it, and if you go through the course and you're paying attention to sort of all this stuff and you're thinking, what's the implication of what they're telling me here? You begin to kind of get a sense and get a feel for what the attitude is. That's a lot of times if you're attracted to a personal growth teacher or whatever, the things that they're saying might make sense to you, but what really kind of resonates with you is they have an attitude towards themselves. They have an attitude towards positive change. They've got an attitude towards life that I like, that makes sense to me, that seems like something I would like to emulate. And so one of the things in Awareness School that we really, I think, emphasize and that comes to life is that overall attitude, so that we're not giving you a big list of things to do. Here's the right way to think about this. Here's what's okay to think about and what's not okay to think about. It's really more a matter of looking at what is my attitude towards what has my attention. How do for example, if I catch myself focusing my mind on what I don't want, so I'm kind of breaking a best practices rule, what's my experience of seeing myself doing something that doesn't serve me? Is that a useful experience or not? Because that experience is not just happening. If I see myself focusing my mind on what I don't want, there's no intrinsic experience to that moment, that instance of awareness. I have to say to myself, oh no, I'm doing something bad. Oh no, I'm doing something wrong. Oh no, something horrible is going to happen to me now. Versus, oh, this is an opportunity to do something different. Here's one of the things, I think, probably to capture this idea of this attitude towards yourself and towards creating change that you want, is a lot of times when people do personal growth work, what they basically do is assemble a whole bunch of ideas about stuff that they should and should not do. I should be positive all the time. I should never think anything negative about anybody else. I shouldn't beat myself up. I should feel grateful all the time. And there's a very kind of heavy, weighty, burdensome, unpleasant experience that can come along with that. Whereas really it's an attitude of opportunity, what we're talking about developing here, so that you go, I have this enormous mental grab bag full of cool things that I can do, opportunities, options that are available to me that might allow me to create a positive change in what it's like to be me, might make it so that I feel a little bit better, might make it so that the quality of my behavior is a little bit improved, might make it so I can get a little bit better quality result than what I normally do. And, if you don't do it or you forget to do it or you try to do it and you fail, so what? Because you have the right attitude towards this stuff. You do what makes sense and you have fun doing it and you're not oppressed by it. You don't feel constrained by it. You don't say, I'd really love to give the person a piece of my mind, but I'm taking this stupid course and they say that you shouldn't. It's not like that. It's really more just learning how to notice what's going on inside your head, the relationships that exist between what's going on inside your head, what's going on in terms of your emotional state, and what's going on with your behavior and the results that you're getting in your life. And you look at all that stuff with clarity in a kind of relaxed, non-judgmental, uncritical way. And you go, this is interesting. I tend to think, feel, and act in these ways. I tend to get these results. Some of these results I don't like. I wonder where there are opportunities for me to make changes in the way that I think, feel, and act, right? And there's a relationship there that might help it, might make it so that I could create more of what I want in areas of life that are important to me. It's like that. See, it's all option. It's all like, tell me some things that I can do that I didn't know that I could do that I can now begin to experiment with doing so that the quality of my life gets better. Not so that I go from being not okay to okay, or not so that I can be, instead of a bad person, a good person, but so that I can start doing life in ways that are more rewarding to me. So
yeah, and it's simple and it's straightforward and it's fun and it's clear. And yeah, I mean, I just personally, as like a student of this course, as much as a teacher of it, it's just so profoundly helpful to, if you've never looked at your life in this way, if you've never looked at your, your personality. I used to think that the way I was just the way I am. I told Steve that when we first started hanging out. I'm like, I'm crazy. That's just me. That's, and so it's kind of like that, when stuff happens to you and you have trauma and you identify with it, and it's just like, oh, well, I just have these issues. And I literally told him to take it or leave it. Because I genuinely experienced...
Was take it even an option in the beginning?
Yeah,
I
right.
think it was just leave it. Right?
Just leave it. And, through this process, learning that my personality is a process. It's not a static isness. It's not something that's forever the same. It's something that's actively and ongoing and changing constantly, and really understanding this self-concept. And like I guess the whole notion of the self-concept has kind of come later, but really when you get into what the 10 weeks of the Ever Better Life course is, it's really looking at the structure of your self-concept and how you see yourself and how you view other people and why you feel about everything the way that you feel. And it's so, when you see it, it's like, oh, no wonder this is the fruit, this is the root. And then the work becomes pruning and gardening and planting the seeds and becoming the person that you want to be by learning how that type of person thinks, feels, and behaves. And it's just like, the clarity that you receive when you dive into this is tremendous and really fun. So we have a couple of questions, and one of them is time commitment. And so as far as time commitment, I mean, it's a 10-week program. We'll do 10 weekly hour to 90-minute sessions on Thursdays starting March 24th. And those are all recorded, so if you are not able to be there live, that's totally okay. There are people the whole last time that, we didn't see them once. And, it's nice to have you there live, but you don't have to be there live. And as far as the implementation guides, how much work would you suggest a person do each week?
That's an interesting question. So there is a lot of material in the course, but most of that material, I personally, the way I like to consume this kind of stuff is like while I'm doing other things. Like I'll put my headphones in or whatever, and as I'm doing the dishes or doing the laundry or like cleaning up or working out or whatever, I'll have it playing in the background. In terms of time commitment, if you want to attend the meetings are typically 60 to 90 minutes, right? So if you wanted to sit down and actually watch the meetings and ask questions, that's optional. Like she said, you don't necessarily have to do that, but there'd be about an hour and a half per week that you would want to sit down. There are implementation guides that a person could do probably in 30 minutes, or you could spend as much as a couple hours working on that, but it's so flexible. The majority of the real work, and this is one of those things, I put all this time and effort into making these guides, and you're supposed to sit down and do this work and write these things out, and that's very powerful stuff. And I remember I'm still kind of riding the wave of having done that kind of work in 2012. I'm still benefiting from clarity of sitting down and writing that stuff out. But still, the most important stuff that you will be doing in terms of implementing this work is watching what's happening inside your mind when you're busy and when you're overwhelmed and when you're taking care of your children and when you're running around doing what you need to do and all of that. It really is practically the ability to observe what's transpiring inside your mind. And so I can imagine a person could take this course and benefit from it a lot without spending any purely dedicated time just sitting down. The children are asleep, the chores are all done, the business is taken care of, now I have time to dedicate only to this course. I don't know that you necessarily have to have any of that if you approach it with the right attitude, which is, listen, I'm not going to get overwhelmed about what I haven't learned and what I haven't heard yet and the notes that I haven't read, the audio I haven't listened to. I'm just going to listen to as much of this as I'm capable of, given the constraints of my situation, and I'm going to implement, I'm going to watch, I'm going to do the awareness exercises, which is really just watching what you're doing as you go throughout your day. So it's kind of one of those things where you could spend as much or as little time on it as you are able to and still derive a lot of the benefit, assuming that you are willing to kind of listen in the car, listen while you're working, listen while you're exercising or whatever. The one kind of caveat to that would be if you're the type of person who tends to get overwhelmed, tends to feel bad about not doing enough, tends to feel bad about not sticking to the program. Oh, I paid the money to enroll in this thing and there's all these notes I haven't looked at. If you know you're going to do that to yourself and you know you're not going to have time to sit down and spend time with it, I wouldn't get in it, right? But if you can say to yourself, listen, this is you've got, indefinite access to the course materials. You have 10 weeks plus to look at the actual meeting videos that we do and all this. If you can be cool about it, and if you can remind yourself, you could even really use that as an awareness exercise. I'm going to enroll in this thing, knowing that I may not have time to do all of the work that they give me as they give it to me. But I also know that they said that the key thing is that I listen to a little bit of it and implement a little bit of it and come back to it consistently over time. I'm going to enroll in this thing and I'm going to watch as I try to freak myself out about not doing enough so that I can consciously and intentionally make a choice not to. So it really is a personal decision. There are people who tend towards overwhelm, who get into this course and they go, oh my God, this is too much. And it becomes a really great awareness moment and learning opportunity for them. There are other people who they get into the course and they're overwhelmed by the amount of material and they just indulge in that and they ride that wave and they freak themselves out and they feel bad about it and all of it. So one of the questions that I would ask myself is, what am I going to do when I get in this course and I feel like I've bitten off more than I can chew and that I don't have enough time and I'm not doing enough of the work and everyone else is doing better than I am and look, so-and-so's always at the meetings and I'm never there. When that voice starts talking to you, what are you going to say to it? Are you going to let it beat you up and make you feel bad, or are you going to go, the fact that this course has given me an opportunity to have this voice into my head and make a conscious choice not to let it push me around anymore? Really is kind of a personal thing. So hopefully that's useful.
Yes. Hello, Antra. Hello, Eurasimos. Antra's got
Get him out of here. He should be.
She asked, how much more of a dive is it than Radically Resourceful, or how is it different? And so Radically Resourceful is our group coaching that meets on Tuesdays. And this is kind of the difference between the pattern and the content. And so Radically Resourceful is like content focused, is people come and they have questions about stuff that they're dealing with, and then we use basically the framework and the structure and the understanding that we've developed personally about ourselves and about life, and that's like applied to the answers given in Radically Resourceful and the suggestions that we provide. And so that's like very content focused, whereas Awareness School and the Ever Better Life course is pattern focused. It's like helping you to do this work so that it's easier for you to see the different kind of compartments of your experience, really getting into like the behind the scenes work of your perception. And so it's like we're working upstream instead of downstream. Downstream, you come, you have a problem, we try to help you solve it. Like you come, you have a problem, that's content down here. Now we want to get up into the factory and say, why does this factory keep producing toxic waste? Why is it doing what it's doing? Why are these emotions coming out of this experience? And so this is us getting into the factory. This is us giving you a tour of a model of how some factories operate in order for you to start saying, oh, no wonder. And so that's how it's different. And so it's a more deep dive in the sense it's not about your stuff. And actually it's like there's a very, we will have 3 bonus sessions where we can get into like the specifics of your stuff and how we can kind of extrapolate and pull back and see how it fits in to the structure of the framework that we'll be working with. So there will be some content and we will be able to kind of help you through some things, but ultimately it's seeing how, you give great examples of how it's kind of like, we don't get emotional about the problem. It's kind of very no nonsense. It's like engineering. It's like your plumbing's not working, and so we don't get really emotional about why it is the way that it is. We get very kind of practical about what needs to be done to address it.
Yes, like, the objective is not necessarily to never feel bad. It's just to respond more intelligently to bad feelings when they happen. It's to respond more resourcefully in ways that are more useful. I think an example kind of along the lines of what you were saying is that Radically Resourceful is almost like a person comes and says, hey, can you show me how to make this particular type of pizza? I don't know, veggie pizza. How would you do? And I'd say, okay, well, you take this ingredient and that ingredient, and you prepare it this way, and we give you a specific recipe and show you how to do it. Whereas Awareness School and the Ever Better Life course is kind of more like culinary school. And there, you don't just go to culinary school and learn, oh, here's this dish, here's that dish. You learn certain fundamentals to cooking and flavors and all this different stuff. And, you get I don't know, what is it? You grasp an essence. There are these underlying themes and patterns, right, that make it, why is it that these ingredients go well on a pizza? And it's like, there are, it's like kind of like music, I could sit down and teach you Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, or perhaps even something more complex than that. Or you could learn, the musical notation, and you begin to get into theory and all these different sort of about the notes and how they relate to one another and all this. That's really kind of what Awareness School and the Every Bit of Life course is getting into the framework. I'd say, it's the skeleton, it's the bones, not the meat. When you understand what's going on kind of at the core, you begin to, we'll be explicitly articulating a lot of patterns that we intimate towards in Radically Resourceful. Because if you listen to us and how we talk people through various things in Radically Resourceful, you'll begin to say there's certain patterns here. There's certain the situations are different, so the words that they use are different, so the descriptions of all those things are different. But there are certain threads that are the same as you run through them. And the really nice thing about Awareness School is that you start to get an explicit, conscious understanding of what those threads are. And then you get to, once you have that basic competence, right? And that's, again, it's not competence about the way things are as handed down from us, but competence in how we tend to think about this type of stuff. That then becomes a resource that you can kind of plug your individual creativity into, right? So the interesting thing about this work is that there are certain things that are common to everybody. Generally speaking, focusing your mind on what you want rather than on what you don't want is a good idea, regardless of what you want and what you don't want, what those things are, and regardless of who you are, like what your mind is. It's almost always better to be focusing your mind on what you want by default than on what you don't want. Once you have hold of that principle, though, that's where your kind of individual uniqueness comes in, because what you want is different than what we want. The challenges that you're facing are different than the ones that we're facing. The resources to which you have access are different. Your own kind of unique creativity is different as well. And so I like the Every Bit of Life course so much because I have worked with so many different kinds of people, like a really, truly eclectic bunch of people. And they all like it in the same way, and then they go off and they use it to do like radically different things and to create happiness and success in the areas of life that are important to them. Their lives are different. The areas of life that are important to them are different. The things that they want in those areas of life are different. And yet this framework allows them to, access and leverage their internal resources in a way that helps them be themselves in a way that is more fun and more fulfilling. Which is nice, that you don't have to. I think very often personal growth approaches or spiritual paths or whatever require a person to sacrifice something about the way that they are, or to pretend to be something that they're not, or whatever. And there's really none of that here. It's really just more about, you focus your mind on stuff, you do things, right, physically, you engage in behaviors, you more than likely feel feelings. You're probably making some kind of pictures in your head. There's probably stuff that you want in life that you don't have. There's probably stuff that you have in life that you don't want. These are all fairly common human things. And what we're talking about is a very high level, kind of patterned-based way of interacting with that stuff. That's almost always going to serve you. And then there's a whole world of customization that you can layer onto that to make it uniquely your own.
Yes. Someone asked how many people. So last time Awareness School we had around 18 20, something like that. And normally about like 50% show up live.
Yeah,
and
consistently, right?
Yeah, we're capping this, I think 30 is going to be like our top for this round. And just to keep it, a nice small size so people can ask questions. But yeah, since that was what it was last time.
If there's a concern there about having your questions answered or whatever, if it's necessary, if for some reason there's more people in it than we think are going to be in it, and it's necessary to have an extra meeting or something like that, or provide email support or whatever in order to get your questions answered, I will say I'm a little obsessive, and anyone who knows I'm a little bit like, I'll spend 45 minutes writing an email for one person, and that's not. I suppose it's generosity if you want to be nice to me about it, but it's really kind of more like I get really into talking about this stuff, and then I'm like, oh boy, that was a lot of stuff, So if it's a concern about one-on-one individual attention, I wouldn't be worried about that. If anything, I would be worried about getting more one-on-one attention than you want, because you're gonna get probably more information than you bargained for.
Yes. let's see, what is it? I think we answered that. What do you expect to gain? I think we had answered that. How to reframe beliefs and perceptions. And so that's kind of a big part of like the core work of what we'll be doing, is understanding your beliefs, your perceptions, where they come from, what they're rooted in, what they reveal. And so, I mean, that's like really what we dive so far into. And that's what's so cool about it. And I think last time we talked a little bit about like how this plays into like the GNM stuff. And that's, again, the difference between like content and pattern, where when you understand the GNM stuff and that your perception and your experience of reality is unique to you, and that there are things that you can tinker with and change to literally completely change an experience. You know, you can completely change something that was a locked up conflict that was tying you up in knots and keeping you up at night and consistently reactivating biological programs within you because of a strictly held perception that you didn't even realize was changeable. You know, you thought that it was made of stone, but it is made of sand, and you can mold it and remold it. And by seeing it, that's how this work, you know, can get to the higher level things that are going into why you have the conflicts you have, and what allows those things to stay alive in your perception, despite, again, when you're trying down here, you're trying downstream to like fix stuff and catch thoughts. We need to get upstream. We need to get to the factory that is producing these consistently, conflict-inducing reactions to your life. And so that's how this kind of works in together. So if you're like, okay, how does this play into like the health stuff? It's when you really have a good handle on this, you can see the trail, you can see the path. When you can see the path between your current experience and the thing that happened, and how the thing that happened shaped you in very subtle and particular ways that is allowing you to continue to see the world in that same way, which is reactivating the same type of biological situation, it becomes easier to make those shifts, make those changes, be more flexible in your perception. That was one thing about me and the way I was prior to this work, was just very rigid. I had very rigid ways of seeing everything. I was very like stuck in certain things are this way, they must be this way, they should, you shouldn't. And that was like inflexible. I thought it was just reality. I thought that this is the way it was. But this allowed me to see, no, that's simply the way that I am. And this is unconscious stuff behind the scenes of my experience that seems as though it is just the way it is. And I would assume it was that way for everybody. And think about how many problems that causes to think that the way I see the world is the way everybody else sees it. And that rigidity, melting that and seeing where I couldn't, or I had such a difficult time seeing things from a different perspective, helped me really make sense out of some of the stuff that I was dealing with. I have found some real subtle conflicts that I have yet to heal. Am I going to find these? Sounds like a yes. You certainly, and that's the thing, is I think when you see this, the stuff that's kind of still seems like, gosh, where is this coming from? I'm so, and then you see it, it's like, it was almost right in front of you all of the time. But again, so subtle and so in the background, and so an unconscious assumption about how things are. And this is what it's doing. We have to bring all of your unconscious assumptions about life to the surface and really vet them and see, does this work for me? Is this creating what I want? And if not, let me tinker, let me play, let me transform this aspect of my perceptual filter.
Yeah, it seems like there are probably a couple of ways that you can think about this kind of work in terms of conflicts that you either have already had or may have in the future, predispositions or whatever. And one of them is, the more aware you become in general, the more kind of equanimity you experience, the higher your emotional threshold, so that your tendency to get worked up to the point that you're freaked out and like really not okay, right? There's that moment in time where I have preferences about what's happening, and I'd rather it be this way than that way, but I'm pretty much cool, whatever. And then somehow it gets shifted into a prerequisite. Like, it's no longer I would prefer it. It's I'm freaking out because it is or isn't the way that I need it to be, or that I think that I need it to be, feel that I need it to be in order to be okay. So that stuff does change. The other thing, though, I get the impression that a lot of people experience the conflicts that they do because they are not free to operate on their reality in ways that will make that reality more acceptable to them. So for example, I'm in a relationship with somebody and I don't either like the fact that I'm in that relationship or that I don't like certain fundamental things about the way that relationship operates. But I'm afraid of upsetting somebody, hurting somebody's feelings, coming off as mean or whatever. I got these weird values and I got these beliefs. I got a value that says, don't upset people. I'm moving away from what I don't want. And I got a belief that says if I make a request of somebody else and they get angry, it means that request was wrong. Or I have a belief that says it's my job to make sure everybody else is okay and that I don't step on anybody else's toes and all this. And because my creativity is constrained by these unconscious arrangements of mind, right? So I just want to see people sometimes will look at what they think, feel, and do and the results they're producing in their life, and they'll go, I must not be very good. I must not be very competent. I must not be very courageous. I must be lacking in some way because I'm not getting really great results. And the thing is, they don't realize that there are all of these unseen constraints being placed upon their creativity, being placed upon their motivation, that they're operating under the influence of constraints of which they are not aware. Why do I always do this? And why do I keep committing myself to this stuff when I don't really want to do it? How dumb is that? And it's like, well, it seems dumb if you don't see the unconscious assumptions that go into kind of, what would you say, pigeonholing you into or painting you into that corner where you really only feel as if you have one option available to you, even if in reality there are many options that could be available to you if you were not constrained by all of these beliefs that you have about what you owe to other people, about what it means to say no and all this stuff. And so when you start to release those things, and when you get really clear on what and by release, I simply mean when you just stop believing that stuff. And the way that you do that, kind of to answer this question about reframing these beliefs, the first way that you change what you believe is that you become acutely aware of the fact that you believe what you do. And then, and this is an important part, because it's not enough just to go at an intellectual level, I know I believe that I'm not good enough. You have to actually watch and witness as that belief manifests itself in your internal experience, in your moment-to-moment behavior, and in the results that you get in your life. You have to encounter the manifestations of that belief as those manifestations occur at each level of your experience. You have to see the belief that you're not good enough manifest in the form of a specific thought that isn't, I'm not good enough. Like the belief that you're not good enough doesn't manifest as an internal mantra, I'm not good enough, I'm not good enough. It manifests as a belief that corresponds to, that makes sense in light of, that implies, that flow from the background belief, I'm not good enough. It's like the Ford car factory doesn't manufacture Ford car factories. It manufactures Ford cars. And if you're not really an expert on cars, or if you're not paying attention, you might have a Ford car drive past you and you don't even know it. But if you know where to look, you can look at the front, you could say, oh, that's a Ford car. And you go, I know where that came from. The same thing with the belief. As you become more aware of these beliefs, you go, that's the I'm not good enough belief. And then you'll start seeing these thoughts driving around your mind. And then you'll say, oh, wait, let me look at the front of it. Oh, sure enough, that's an I'm not good enough belief. And here are the feelings that are associated with it. I build these feelings up inside myself. And then eventually those feelings discharge as behaviors that create and perpetuate a reality that seems to provide me with evidence that I'm not good enough. And then I really believe I'm not good enough, and so on and so forth. And so what you want to do in order to stop believing something, first, stop trying to stop believe it, right? Stop trying to stop believing it. You just want to watch yourself believe it. You want to observe it. And you say, I know it, I've seen it and all this. No. You want to really, really watch it even closer than that, because there are ways in which that belief is manifesting itself in your experience, your behavior, and results that you don't recognize. And then, so it's a really great thing. You encounter the evidence that you're not good enough. Let's say somebody rejects you, or you don't get the job, or whatever. And instead of that being evidence that you aren't good enough, you recognize that's evidence that I believe that I'm not good enough. That thing is no longer saying this is what's true about you. That thing, that way that the world is responding to me, is telling me what I believe is true about myself. That's different. That's a new experience of the same old thing happening. And that's really the process by which the belief falls away. But people want to tear the belief away from the outside. They don't want to let themselves just be inside the belief and grow until it kind of, you have to shed the skin. It's a sort of a serpent-like thing where you grow inside your current self to the point that it kind of just ossifies and falls away. Yes,
and one of the things, so there's a whole module on beliefs in the course, and then and so we'll dive into it. You'll have the module to go through, and then we'll do the deep dive together. And also, we have an early bird running through Sunday, and so if you're like, yes, I'm definitely doing this, sign up before Sunday. And you'll also get the Beyond Belief course, which is like a really fun, I love the Beyond Belief course. It's such a fun little course of really tons of great analogies and examples. That's like one of the things that, Steve is like a expert at. There's just so many analogies and ways of getting it to stick in your mind. And that's what I really love about the Beyond Belief course. It's tons of ways of really experientially seeing, how do I get a belief to change? How do I actually get into the factory and retool it so that I can consistently believe the things that would serve me to believe? So that's really fun. So do that by Sunday to get that bonus. Someone asked earlier, would it help with letting go of resentments? And so just like you were explaining with like the conflict stuff, probably the reason that you are consistently feeling in this state of resentment towards people or situations in your past or present, it's because of the way your mind is arranged. It's because of beliefs that you have about what people should, what they shouldn't do, what they ought to do, what you must do. And so again, you're constrained in your ability to release it. And every single time you're like, it would be so good for my health to release this resentment. It would be so great. It'd be the, the spiritual thing to do, the right thing to do. Okay, Antra, awesome. And because you are so rigid, you keep going back to the resentment, even though the conscious mind is like, I want to change, I want to change, I want to change. And that's where change work gets so frustrating, because you're like, I've been trying to change for forever. What is wrong with me that I can't do it? And it's just often invisible things, invisible threads that are holding you in the configuration you're in. And by seeing it, you'll see, this is why I can't let go of this resentment. This is why it's been so hard for me to do this thing that I've been wanting to do for so long, because I just wasn't seeing all of the things that once you see it, it makes perfect sense. Like everything about what you're currently doing makes perfect sense if we look at the way your mind is currently arranged. And that's where it's like, there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken. You're just the code under which your mind computer is operating. There's like something funky going on there where you're consistently, you're coded to experience and get outcomes that you don't want. And then you continually feel frustrated, but it's like, if your factory is configured in a certain way, you're going to get the same result. And no matter how many times you run through it, no matter how many times you're like, oh, I'm going to try so hard for it to be different this time, that's why you have to get into this stuff to see why exactly does this keep happening. And once you see it, you feel empowered. And that's really what this is all about, is becoming your own, being able to diagnose your own problem in the sense of like, I'm having this feeling. I know exactly where this comes from, like you were describing. I know what this is evidence of. I know where the work actually has to be done. It's not going after the downstream stuff. It's getting up there and figuring out, what does it feel like for this to change? What does it feel like for my self-concept, for these beliefs, for this stuff to actually reconfigure? And we'll get into that and what it feels like, how you know when you're doing it, how you know when you're not doing it. And so, yeah, that's how we would handle the resentment question.
Yeah, I think the person tends to let go of resentment when their criteria for letting go of resentment have been fulfilled. And, I think that probably consists of a couple of different things. Probably consists of permission to feel resentful, just to say, get rid of the idea you're not allowed to feel that way. Probably consists of getting rid of the idea that you should not feel resentful, right? So that's getting rid of two ideas. I'm not allowed and I shouldn't be doing this. It's kind of the same, but a little different, And then introducing some new ideas. Like, for example, what would I be feeling if this resentment weren't so much a part of my life anymore? Or what it's like to be me be like? What would the quality of my life? What kind of good feelings could I get so interested in and excited about feeling that this resentment would simply no longer have a place in my life, so that it wasn't something I was giving up? You don't want to treat that resentment like smoking, if you're a smoker, or alcohol, if you drink alcohol, or chocolate, or whatever, because a lot of people, I have noticed that people tend to think about the things that they do that don't necessarily serve them in ways that make continuing to do those things maximally attractive and appealing. And my whole thing is like, it's not a problem that you're feeling resentful or that you have a lot of resentment in your life. The question really is just, what would it take for that resentment to kind of dry up and fall away? What if you were too busy to keep doing it? What if there were other things that just kind of crowded it out? And there are also there are some things that you can change about the way that you're thinking about the people and the situations that are, that the resentment kind of pertains to. But a big part of it too is starting to think, what's the wonderful life that I deserve to be living that I'm not living, in part because this resentment's taking up so much of my time and energy, And so you get a whole bunch of that stuff going at once. And essentially what it is self-persuasion. Can I persuade myself to let go of some of this stuff that, I've kind of had my fill with, and can I persuade myself to think about this resentment in a way that actually allows me to let it go instead of hanging on to it and feeling bad about the fact that it's still there. It's figuring out what works for you. It's not, when you're trying to get like a door handle that's stuck, you kind of wiggle it and you get the WD-40 out and is that how you say that?
Yeah.
I'm always, when I was little, I had a habit of saying DW40 and everyone
funny.
thought it was really cute. They laughed and I was humiliated by it. And so every time I use that as a reference, I'm thinking, is that the right? And I can never get it. It's a kind of a leap of faith. When people think you're cute as a kid, but you're not trying to be cute. You're trying to talk about something. But anyway, you spray that on the door. You don't want to break it. You want to finesse it. You want to get it to the point where a moderate amount of effort force is sufficient to get the thing to go. And that's kind of what we do with negative emotions, bad beliefs, behaviors, things like that.
Yes, someone asked, can you take it as a couple? And we actually haven't talked about that for this round. So let me get back to you to see if we'll do, kind of couples can take it together or if it'll be kind of a discounted price. But I'll let you know because we haven't actually discussed that. And someone else, I didn't see this question, Molly, that you had, but yeah, so you guys can, I think that kind of answers all the questions that have come through so far tonight. If you have any other questions, if you're wondering if this is right for you, you can message us so we can chat about it. But yeah, read through the sales page, see if it works for you timing wise. If you can be there live, that would be awesome. Like we said before, there are going to be replays, so if you're not in this time zone, you can watch everything after the fact and submit questions. We will have 3 additional bonus meetings. We haven't set the dates for them yet, so it'll be flexible kind of depending on the class. We found that we preset the dates last time, and it would have been better to have them in different positions based on the content that we were going through that week. And so we'll try to arrange those in a different time, so in the morning instead of the evening, so people who maybe can't normally join us live can be there for the bonus sessions. But yeah, we're super excited. It's going to be really fun. We start March 24th, early bird ends Sunday at 9 o'clock Pacific time, and includes Beyond Belief. Anything else?
I think that's it, unless there's another question or something.
Nope, I think we're all good. Awesome.
Okay.
So thank you guys for joining us. Reach out if you need anything or have any questions. But yeah, if Awareness School, you kind of know. You're like, yes, I'd love to know that. It's, just go with your gut, because I think it'll really reveal a lot of stuff to you. You have lifetime access to it. You'll be able to and people actually from last round are going back through the material. And that's actually something I wanted to mention. This isn't a 10 weeks and done. This is the 10 weeks is the beginning of your lifelong journey of doing this work. And so you kind of think about jumping into this and learning the framework and then applying it for forever. And you constantly enrich your understanding of it. And so it really is a beginning sort of 10 weeks. Let's dive in and cover all the stuff, and then you'll just keep going through it. So it's definitely a lifetime investment sort of thing.
Yeah, to put that in perspective, I used to do coaching along with Every Bit of Life course, and typically we would do 1 module per month, so it would be 10 months to go through it. And even when that was the case, I would tell people, listen, we're moving through this stuff pretty quickly. And so as we're going through it in 10 weeks, the objective and the goal is, I have found personally that when I used to get a book or a course or whatever, the hardest thing to overcome was my unfamiliarity with it. There was this big, huge thing, and I didn't know exactly what was going to be in it. And I just kind of was intimidating, and because I didn't know what to expect, it was very easy to put it off until later and later and later, and then I just never did it. So the point of the 10 weeks is to, I think, get you really excited about it, to show you some of the things that's possible, to show you what it looks like after you've been working with it for a while, to get you to draw back that rubber band big time and familiarize you, to build up that kind of excited tension, and to build up enough familiarity in you working together and with other people and all of this that it's maximally easy for you to continue the exploration on your own moving forward, and the implementation and the experimenting with the stuff. And so it's definitely not something that you're supposed to master or even necessarily consume even all of the content. It's really more, I want to take you, and I'm like the park ranger, and I'm going to take you into the national forest. I'm going to show you the main trails. I'm going to show you some cool stuff. And I'm going to show you some things, some ways that people get lost or get into trouble and all this. And we're going to go through there together and get your kind of competence level up to the point and your confidence level where you can then go into the forest with your map and you can then explore on your own and have fun. And so this 10-week period is the intensive. Let me show you where the cliffs are. Let me show you where the bears live. Let me show you where the cool hot springs and the waterfalls are and all of that. And then, it's fun moving forward for you. We get you... it's almost like when your parents would push you on the swing in the beginning, like or anyone, friend or whoever. And once the person gets you pushed, you can kind of lean back and forward, and you still have to make a little effort. You know what I mean? Like if you really want to, if you want to be doing like the flip arounds on the swing and stuff, you have to put a little leg kick and a little crunch and all that into it. But it's much easier to keep that crazy momentum going once you're already in motion. And so this 10 weeks largely is a matter of getting you swinging dangerously high on the swing so that you can have fun on it instead of just kind of going like this.
Yes, and this live will be available to rewatch if you just joined us. So yeah, we'll wrap it here tonight. Thank you guys. We'll go live a couple other times before it starts. So if you have any other questions, feel free to let us know. Goodbye.
See ya.